Welcome back to Pod by the Bay. I'm Seth Varnadore, joined by Robert Steeg, and we are here to talk a little bit of a year-end review before the bowl game. Next week will be all, next couple of weeks will be all kind of bowl game prep. But want to take a look back at the regular season. We asked our patrons. We put out a little survey. We got a lot of responses. So Steve and I are going to give our responses to the survey, go through what some of our patrons thought. I think it's a good cross section of USF fans. So get a pretty good look at the 2024 USF regular season. So, Steeg, let's start you and I first, and then I'll read some responses or try to kind of find if there's a common theme in the responses. So there's one theme throughout the survey, one participant. I'll make sure to read theirs because that was a pretty good throughout the survey here. Steeg, question one. What was the highest point of USF football's 2024 season in your opinion?
Oh, I'm going to act surprised on all of these when I wrote all of the questions myself. Ooh, great question, Seth.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, it was probably seeing the proof of concept really work against Tulsa. And I know Tulsa's defense was like exceptionally bad this year. But like you kind of got the whole offense clicking completely together for essentially the entire game. Yeah, of course, at the end of the game when you're rolling out like walk-ons and third stringers, it's not going to be as efficient. But for the most part, like seeing the offense fully click like that was fantastic to see. That's exactly why, like, you bring in Alex Golesh, you get performances like that where you put up 63 points with really not a lot of effort. So yeah, I'd had to say that. And then like on the flip side, like defensively, like the Charlotte game, I know it's the highest point, but like kind of those two things back to back working together, where you got like a really, really, really good defensive outing followed by a really, 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 really good offensive outing. You see the proof of concept working together and a beautiful harmony. Now you just have to, put them together in the same game, and then it's perfect. And then you're 12-0 and undefeated, and it's a great time for everyone.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, if you wanted to say the Tulsa game, that also gets you that bowl eligibility, right? So get you to that 6-win mark. I would, I don't know. I would think probably, and this has been some others' answers, just kind of the Alabama game. Like as you got further and further into that Alabama game, that being tight. I also thought like really like the first half against Miami, I thought was really good. Like in terms of just competitiveness, what ended up being, Alabama and Miami both ended up being right on the outside of the playoff. So I thought kind of the proof that I thought there was some proof of concept in those games as well. Just kind of being able to hang tough, especially that Alabama game. I think because that went deeper into the game. Now Miami got turned around on you really fast, but those were both, especially being on a national stage and kind of the way they came out firing. I think they put a good look on the team for most of those two games, and unfortunately weren't able to totally take advantage of some of the momentum they built in terms of like public relation positive momentum. But I think those were two pretty high spots. Here's a couple. Breaking ground on the stadium was another big one, but more of an off-field. There's a few kind of being within one score of Bama through 7/8 of the game. Hanging with Bama for 55 minutes. Like that was a pretty fun game. Another one that was a common, getting Tom Herman fired, beating FAU in that Clown Herman revenge beatdown of FAU. Goach cucking Herman was one of the responses. So, yeah, so that seemed to be the most common one, is that getting revenge against FAU and also getting Herman out of the paint there. Some other good ones, making a bowl game after Byram got injured stuffing FAU and Tom Herman into a locker. So it seems to be the most common ones are playing Alabama close deep into the game, or beating FAU, getting that revenge, and getting Tom Herman fired. So that seems to be the most common refrain.
That's about right.
Now, Steve, we talk about the highs, but we also talk about the lows here. So what was the lowest points of USF football's 2024 season, in your opinion?
The entire week leading up to that Memphis game. Like, yeah, we could talk about like not like coming out flat against like lesser opponents and what happened against Navy and Rice, foreshadowing Rice here. But man, like I had never felt so passionately towards like the wrong decision getting made and one that ultimately like probably doesn't really change that much, but like just the entire time that week there wasn't a good feeling in my body at all, like let alone the hurricane stuff that was going on. But like these guys having to travel to Orlando, play a game in front of like 600 people who also were just affected by the hurricane, and their families were affected by hurricane. So like that to me was the low point. Like I wish the conference didn't force us to play that game. I wish we could have postponed it instead. I understand the logistics of what that would entail, but to me, it left such a sour taste in my mouth that like I probably got home after the hurricane and like sat down and was like, I'm so unbelievably pissed that they played a football game like 2 days after a major hurricane skirted by Tampa. Like,
yeah. And yeah, that was a bizarre one, and that seems to be kind of the third most common response in our surveys. Memphis and all the hurricane impacts, being forced to play Memphis after the hurricane. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a good one. Mine personally would be the Miami second half, and then rolling into the Tulane game. That part of the season. And then you go into a bye where, coming into halftime, if I talked to you at halftime of the Miami game, you would have been sky high. If I talked to you after the Tulane game where Byron Brown got hurt and you just got rolled for 3 halves of football in a row, like people were down after that. So to me, that's kind of that little stretch is the low point. And then you have to sit with the bye, and then the Memphis stuff happened. So that was
a tough 4 weeks.
You had somebody mention the loss to Tulane. The most common one in our survey is the Byron Brown injury. The moment Byron Brown went down, BB going down, BB 17 injury, BB getting hurt, when Byron was hurt, and then the debacle of the quarterback situation that followed. Second seems to be the loss to Rice, which is always sucks when it's your last game of the year. But with that, how bad that Rice team was, that's pretty bad. One off it's kind of interesting. You kind of forget about it now that you read it. The Navy game where a fullback caught a 30-yard touchdown as the half basically expired. Yeah, that was tough. That was a tough spot, right? So that was, but seems like the 3 most common ones: Byron Brown's injury, the losing to Rice, and then the hurricane and the Memphis game. Kind of that seem to be the 3 most common. There's a few others, but those seem to be kind of the pretty common ones throughout here. Oh, I meant to give some of these out. So there is one person I want to. These are anonymous, but I do want to I think their survey is worthwhile. For the highest point, they had 9/28/2024. Andrew Stokes booms a 61-yard punt against Tulane. The lowest point, 9/14 against Southern Miss. Stokes only averaged 35 yards per punt. So we'll make sure to read these persons' responses throughout. Next one, Steeg. What was your favorite play from the season? I've got mine ready to go.
You want to say on the count of three? Because I have a feeling it's the same.
Oh,
Gut.
I don't know. I don't know how. I don't know if we're gonna say it the same way.
Yeah, probably not.
I think I know what yours is.
I promise it's not a punt.
I know. I think I know what yours is.
No.
Somebody guess yours?
Guess mine.
The Doug Blue Ely interception.
It was close. That was second or third, depending on it. That James Chenault chase down tackle might have been my favorite play, purely off of just.
There's a couple nice chase down tackles.
Mm-hmm, yeah. I know someone mentioned it in the survey as well that was their favorite as opposed to the Ben Knox one, the men that made like top plays of the day. Be candid, Ben Knox got burned. James Chenault became a hero.
That was looking at that was the rationale.
Mm-hmm. But also, again, I know it's also mentioned here the John Cannon fake field goal against Southern Miss was a lot of fun. I wish they did that more.
Mine was the Philly special type play against Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my favorite singular play.
I don't think anyone mentioned that one.
No, I don't think so either. Let's see if there's any ones. Pick a Kelly Joyner touchdown. Douglas Blue Ely pick does get on there. The Herman handshake gets on there. Doug Blue Ely interception has a couple votes. Ben Knox chase down for someone's got a couple votes. Catching the guy from behind on defense for Charlotte, that's the Chenault rundown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then two people have, well, this is interesting. Two people have Golesh's handshake with Tom Herman. And then two people also have Archie to Jaquan Smith long touchdown. They got called back. So that's interesting.
I think there were
this is going to sound crazy, but the Archie bomb to Jaquan that was called back for illegal touching. Yes, the penalty sucked, but it showed the big play potential offense in the passing game. And somebody else said Archie to Jaquan Smith long touchdown that got called back. So
I think that wet the whistle for a lot of people on Jaquan Smith. I think that keeping this PG, that got people excited for a lot of different reasons.
That and the college football video game.
Yes, that too.
Honorable mention: Naquan Rice's stiff arm touchdown run against FU is extremely satisfying to watch.
Oh, you missed one to talk about as well.
Oh, which one?
Either the 61-yard punt against Tulane or the 60.
Oh, that's right. Yes, I forgot.
Those were big punts.
Yes. So as we go on to the next section here, we've got who's your offensive MVP. We'll show the graphic here.
Yeah.
We had some options. There was some write-in potential. We had Sean Atkins, Kelly Joyner as options. There were a couple of write-ins as well. You'll be shocked to see that somebody wrote in Andrew Stokes after seeing some of the previous responses. Bryce Archie gets a vote. Might be tongue-in-cheek. And then, interesting enough, Sean Atkins, 0 votes.
No votes for
Kelly
Sean
Joyner, 91%. I would agree with the 91%. Kelly Joyner Jr. was the best player.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, for Bryce to come in and start 6 games for us in relief duty and play as hard as he did, give him his rose. He did a great job servicing in. But yeah, I mean, Kelly Joyner was clearly by far the offensive MVP this year for us.
And he's a guy who, by some opponent adjusted metrics, was one of the top 10 running backs in the country in terms of expected points added. So really good year for him. All right. So naturally, next is the defensive MVP. There is one vote for, I'm assuming this is the person that voted Andrew Stokes for offensive MVP. Their vote for defensive MVP was also Andrew Stokes. So
it would make sense.
So some of the options were Mac Harris, Jalen Schuler, Decarius Hawthorne. Then there were some write-ins. Steeg, who is your defensive MVP?
This one was tricky because I'm going to be candid. There wasn't one particular player on defense that just was a star week in and week out. I would probably say Decarius Hawthorne just because he really came in and provided a huge spark every time that he was in. His stats didn't pop, obviously, because he's a nose, but he definitely I think he added a lot of juice to this team. Plus, he's got a fun name, so why can't you not love that?
Yeah, I'm going with Mac Harris was who I thought. Just looking at some of the numbers, just try to contextualize a little bit. He ended up being sixth in the conference in tackles for loss. Decarius Hawthorne was 8th, so pretty close. Bernard Gooden was 10th. And then I think he was the team leader in tackles as well. Was Mac Harris. So I think him. And then you think it's back to some of the really big plays in the season. You think like the Charlotte game, and he always seemed to be around the football. So I thought he was the guy, but our defensive MVP was Jalen Schuler with 36% of the vote. So
captain on defense makes sense.
Pretty close. I mean, pretty close here, but that makes sense. Somebody said co-MVPs. So, all right. So moving on in the old survey here, who's the biggest surprise player for you this season? Steve, who's your biggest surprise?
Yeah, I mean it's with the masses on this one. Keshawn Singleton blew up over the last 6 weeks. Yeah, I mean that was
got some surprise player votes as well. You're gonna be shocked to learn.
I don't think he could be an MVP and a surprise player at the same time. But yeah, I mean he truly it's going to happen every year, right? There's freshman, sophomore, not much playing time. They come in and explode onto the scene. His came at the absolute perfect time too, when USF was really reeling for a go-to wide receiver target, and it worked out perfectly for USF.
And Keshawn, I would agree. They were looking for somebody receiver. When you thought about the guys that would be there this year, he was not a name that popped up, and he won 50% of the vote. So Keshawn Singleton, the biggest surprise player for us this season. If you could change one specific moment from this past season, what would it be? I think a lot of people are going to say the Byron Brown injury. Somebody did say better punt coverage. So I think that's probably the person that. What would you? I think there's another one that some people did say that I think is interesting. Quite a few people said it actually. But what is your specific moment that you would like to change?
Yeah, this one I had trouble with just because I tried to make this as specific as possible. Where the Byron Brown injury is obviously the most prominent one. You're yes, change that play. I think kicking the field goal against Alabama, at that moment, it felt really bad. And the Byron Brown injury, I hate to say it this way, an injury is an injury, right? Bad luck, whatever.
Yeah, if it didn't happen that play, could have possibly happened another play, but
right. But you had the opportunity in your hand to do something. And at that point, a 50-50 coin flip, and you chose to play it safe, and lo and behold, here we are. So I would probably say that.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a lot of no specific play. I think potentially change the game, but I think the only one would be going for the field goal down 8 against Alabama. There was a lot of kicking the field goal late against Bama, not going for the touchdown. Wish it had been more aggressive. That, along with the Byram injury, is kind of seemed to be the most common. Not playing conservative against Alabama. That's what I would have thought. That might be the one there. There's some other ones that were kind of interesting. Putting Izzy in blowout games sooner would have suggested to see more of him. I don't know if that changes anything, but if he plays well and plays more, then possibly. this was an interesting one I didn't really think about. Schuler's interception, which resulted in him getting hurt. Because he came back and played well, but he still looked like he was still, not 100% at times. So, and then there's two other ones that I thought were interesting. So, Byron missing the downfield shots against Bama that were open. And there's two people that responded with that, which would have changed the momentum of the game. Which, yeah, it's possible if you hit those two deep shots early that you're up a couple of touchdowns on Alabama, and maybe that game does change a little bit. And then the other one I think is a really good kind of suggestion here is, and we kind of heard one part of it, but the 30-yard touchdown to the fullback and with Navy, but the interception Archie threw before that to set that up. Somebody said that was which they could change. Last minute of the first half, Archie arm punt and the Navy scoring touchdowns half expired. So that was a terrible turn of events there at the end of a half. So that was tough. This was an interesting one. Great question here from Steeg. If you could take one player from a fellow AAC school and put them on the USF football team, who would it be? Oh, we'll bring in one more respondent here. Colin, welcome. We are here on Pod by the Bay. We are going through our survey here, so you can answer the last question. You could answer the last two questions for us. We'll get your take.
Okay, sure.
Number one, or the one, and you could be the last one to answer, so you have some time. If you could take one player from a fellow AAC school and put them on the USF football team, who would it be? Steve, what was your pick?
I didn't go into this one with many expectations. I wanted to see what other people were going to put.
I will say our punting friendly friend did say Colby Cox, long snapper, Memphis. So he must be pretty good.
Yeah, that I think he took first team all conference long snapper. I was kind of shocked at how many people said quarterbacks. I get it, because at that point there was really not that much confirmation about Byram's status at this point. So I get that. The funniest one, I was like, who the hell is Xavier Hill? I was expecting people to be like, oh, CJ Campbell or CJ Hurd, these quarterbacks. I was like, who the hell's Xavier Hill? He was the two-time all-first team offensive tackle from Memphis. So yeah. I was like, okay, yeah. But I'm probably on the same line of that. I know it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but man, a good offensive line, I can never take for granted. We can find speedy running backs and slippery wide receivers and DBs all day. But getting a good offensive line, I yearn for it. So I probably echo an Xavier Hill at this point.
Yeah, and we saw some of that. Whoever's the best offensive line in the conference, literally any of the linemen on the all-conference first team. Connor Finucane from Army, I believe, is an offensive lineman. CJ Kimball Jr. or the entire Army offensive line, one of the CJs at FAU. I think the way the season ran out. Now, the other popular one was Mario Williams from Tulane. Not only is he kind of a local kid, but he had a pretty good year there at Tulane as a guy that would probably fit really well in the offense. Yeah, I mean, I'd take Mensa or Hennigan. The way the season,
God, no.
The way the season broke out. Yes.
You like Hennigan? I think he's terrible.
I like him better than Bryce Archie. No offense to Bryce Archie.
I like him better than Bryce Archie too, but I don't think he's good. I think the dearth of quarterback play in this league,
or the other one, Rock Taylor from Memphis. Yeah, if you need a big body receiver that can kind of win some jump ball stuff, but Hennigan threw for 3,200 yards, 23 touchdowns. He's a bit of an accumulator, but.
He's not a difference maker at all, and he also makes a lot of mistakes. He misses a lot of open throws. I just
think quarterback could be a really high, in this exercise when the quarterback with Byron being hurt. I think a quarterback could be really high impact. Chandler Morris was an interest. Somebody said Chandler Morris would be very interesting to see in this offense.
Yeah, I agree.
I would take Morris over Hennigan for sure.
Yeah, Chandler Martin was another one that a few people said from Memphis, I believe, defensive player. He's second in the conference tackles for loss. I think he's really high up in tackles as well. So
Yeah, I don't love it. I mean, I think the league was kind of down this year. I do like Anderson a lot when he's healthy. I think he's really good. I watch a lot of Memphis for work reasons.
Yeah, the
And I
back.
really, yeah, the back.
Yeah,
He's really good.
Mario
Yeah,
Anderson.
Mari Anderson. I think he's very, very good. I was coming around on the Tulane QB, whose name just is
Mensa.
escaping me. Mensa, thank you. Who I was coming around on him, and I was starting to like what I saw there. I think he can take away the last game of the season there a little bit. But I liked where he was going, and I guess with Summerall potentially not being there next year either, I think it's probably smart for him to get out while he can.
Would you take
Um,
EJ? Somebody said EJ Warner as Byram's backup.
God, no, no, Jesus,
Oh,
no.
I would.
Oh
Oh, I
God,
absolutely would. I absolutely would.
no.
There,
Oh
He's
my
there
sweet Jesus in
are,
heaven, no.
there are probably like
he's
16 quarterbacks
unbelievable,
in college
and
football that I wouldn't,
he
that I
throws for
wouldn't take.
three. He throws for 300 yards every time he's in a game, and USF's in the same game.
I still have the Temple bias against that kid. Like I mean,
That's
he
fair.
was just so bad. He was so bad. Like he was just. There's not a lot of raw talent there.
What I'm really
Um,
interested with him, and this is turning into like an AAC dudes podcast, but he's a really fast processor, and he just throws it. I wonder if he had a better supporting cast, if like he'd be like poor man's Dylan Gabriel.
real like homeless man's
Real
in
poor.
debtor's prison in Australia. Like what? Oh my God, poor man's Dylan Gabriel. Well, I mean, woof.
Debtor's
Um,
That's got to be the tagline from this episode. Is EJ Warner a poor man's Dylan Gabriel? Find out now on the Bay Area
He
Examiner.
seems to me he's a quick processor, and he just throws the ball where a lot of times where it should go, but sometimes
he-
he gets tricked and he
Not in
forces
the-
it.
he's so
He's
bad.
interesting to me. And you got Kurt
I
Warner
thought
on the program.
that wouldn't hurt. I didn't think the receiver talent in this league was like super great this year. The team, ironically, that I think should have dominated the receiver labels was UTSA. The problem was they all got hurt.
So with the way the year went out, would there be any thought to Bryson Daly?
So I can't figure out how much of that is his triple and how much of that is he's really good. Like he's just a very, very like take away, the triple. I think he's a quarterback for sure. Is he a plus guy that can win you a conference championship in a more conventional system? That I don't know. But he's definitely a baller. And it doesn't matter anyway. He's gonna go serve our country. He's not getting in the portal. So because they've already talked about that he would be one of those guys that might be eligible for the thing where you can like come out of the military and like or serve later or serve in the National Guard if you're good enough and stuff. He might be one of those guys. But yeah, I don't see anybody. I thought the league as a whole this year was pretty bad. I think the separation has started even a little sooner than I thought it would between the P5 and the G5. The talent levels, if you're going to build a team at the G5 level now, you need to invest in young players, and you're probably going to need to figure out a way to keep the good ones for more than a year. And I just don't know how you do that.
Fake injuries. All right.
Yeah.
How would you?
You know what? You know what? If I could keep a kid, McCune from UTSA, I think he'd be a really good fit for what USF does, just because they need a receiver that can go and get it, and can continue to make plays. He got hurt. He was one of their 900 guys who got hurt, but he was super diverse. Could bust some things open, but also had the ability to like just get a lot of balls and get open in short space. And I thought he was really good.
All right, last question here on the survey. How would you rate the Alex Golesh tenure so far at USF from 1 to 10? 1 being we should have never hired this clown. 10 meaning we should build him a statue and he should never have to buy a beer using his own money again in this town. I'll tell you what. Do we want to do our responses first, or do you want me to tell you where the fan sentiment is at?
We'll do our responses first, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Don't bias me. I think. Go ahead.
Go on,
Steve.
Colin. You're first. You're coming in more blind than any of us, actually.
Yeah,
I wrote the same thing.
I didn't even take it, so I'm hearing these blind. I'd say 6.3. I think it's right about um, where I would hope to be, but certainly not exceeding my hopes at this point. I think it's right about copacetic. Um, this is this is the most important offseason, obviously, since he's been here. How many of these guys is he going to be able to keep? What's he going to be able to do in the portal? What's his budget going to be for the portal? I'm hearing big numbers that could possibly be available to him, that he's going to be able to go out and spend some money. And, I'm for my real job, I'm checking these kids into the portal, like literally data entering all of these kids into the portal every day. There's some dudes out there who can play.
It's a lot of them.
Yeah,
I think I had somebody said there was 15,500 kids in the portal.
no, it's all right. It's not
Is
that many. That's too many. It's maybe 1,500.
1,500 kids in the portal?
Yeah, 1,500 in the portal sounds about right, but it's not 15,000. The although if you're counting now, even if you're counting like D2, D3,
Lower
it's not
levels,
gonna be
that's probably way too high, right?
yeah, that's still going to be too many. It's probably about 1,500. So we always figure at work that skill position, which is all we really chart for what we're doing. It's about 23 to 27% of your roster, depending on how many guys you have and everything like that. Like some teams have a ton of depth at receiver. Some teams have a ton of depth. Some teams are carrying 6 and 7 quarterbacks. Some teams are not. That'll all change next year when we go to the 105 cap. But
So last year there were 3,300 in the portal. That looks
3,300 total. Yeah, that sounds about right. So that means 700 skill guys. 750 skill guys that are going to be in there.
Yeah,
that also might be
so far.
Yeah, that would also be counting guys that are moving up. So FCS guys that are going to take their shot. I think that's become much more of a thing. I see a lot of these kids that put up big numbers, drawing a lot of interest, it seems like, from the on-threes of the world. Kids that played really well at like high level FCS schools and 1,000 yards receiving, 3,000 yards passing, whatever it is. They're seeming to get a lot of interest from the bigger schools. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Steve, what's your number?
Yeah,
Alex Golesh, 1 to 10.
I took this into a vacuum, doing my best to not let the Byron Brown injury bias my assumptions too much. I would put it more like probably like between 7 and 8, leaning more towards like the higher end. By the way, a new cat for people that are on the video here, new cat in the background, who's going to join us on this podcast and show her butthole. But the like Byron Brown injury aside, that kind of derailed a lot of the progress that this team was making. I mean, like going into that Tulane game, like things were bad there, but like I don't think if you had Byron Brown get injured for basically the entirety of the regular season, that the season feels as derailed as it got. That was an emotional blow to the team. So I think the team was making a lot more progress up until that moment, and then it got torn back down, and then they had to remake a lot of that progress to just be back at the baseline. So I would probably put it like 7.8. There's still some question marks. There's still some things that I'm like, oh, buddy, these receivers that you brought in from the transfer portal kind of stunk this year. What happened with this offensive line? Like you hand selected a lot of these guys and a lot of them didn't pan out. Defensively, you turned the corner though. Credit to your defensive coordinator for that, for helping getting the team out of the hundreds. Now it's time for that next step. So I think that they've done a very, very good job. There's obviously room for improvement, but it's hard to complain when you look back to see where this team was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, really.
I'm going to take 2 pops against you there, Bobber, because one is that I thought at the beginning of 2024, even when he was healthy, I thought there was some regression in Byram's game. I thought he wasn't playing as well at the beginning of 2024 as he was at the end of 2023. And I don't know if that was like mechanical changes that were attempted. I don't know if they were putting in different elements of the offense that Byram wasn't comfortable with, but I thought he did not play as well to start the season as he did at the end of the season. And so I'm definitely taking points off Golesh for that. And then secondly, if Sean Atkins is your best receiver, in 2023, and then Sean Atkins is your best receiver again. And God love Sean Atkins. I love that kid. I love what that kid has done for this university. I think it's awesome. He probably at one point waited on me at Meat Market. I used to eat there a lot when I lived over on that side of town. Like I cannot say enough about that kid and what he's done for our school. I mean, for me, that's like a borderline USF Hall of Fame guy someday. Like not even as a joke. Like couple 1,000-yard receiving seasons.
He's got school records, right?
School records. Like he is legit in that conversation. I think that's amazing. But if he's your best receiver 2 years in a row, you didn't do enough. You are not recruiting to that position well enough, and that's just not on the kid. It's just on the talent level.
Yeah,
like there's just nobody there who's making plays the way that they need to make plays.
I'm interested to see how important Naeem Simmons and Jaden Alexis were there. I would say a 7. I think is kind of where I'm at on the 1 to 10, just because it's better. I think last year was much better than expected. So that gives you a bump. I think 5 would be if it was a 5 to me, that would be kind of as expected so far. No, not great, not whatever. So 7 to me, I think last year they were above expectation. They performed above expectations. This year they, especially when you factor in the quarterback injury, they basically met expectations, at least my expectations, and I think the Vegas win total expectations were pretty close to that. So they were kind of right on where their preseason expectations were for most people. I think so. To me, that would be a 7. If they went from this year, made the playoff, well, now we're talking 9 and 10. But to me, overperform 1 year, perform about at expectation the second year, I'd put that at a 7. And it seems like, looking at the survey here, 7 is the most common response, followed by 8, which has 7 has 40.9% of the vote, 8 has 36.4% of the vote, 6 is next with 13.6, and 5 and 10 are tied with 4.5% apiece. So
bell curve.
So
I want
9, nobody below 5. So
I want to know who's grading a 10 for a team that went 6-6 this year.
Probably you missed the entire survey. I think I know who it was.
let me give you some select answers here for one survey listener, one survey completionist here. Highest point of USF season, 9/28/24. Andrew Stokes booms a 61-yard punt against Tulsa. Lowest point of the USF season, 9/14 against Southern Miss. Stokes only averaged 35 yards per punt. Favorite play from the season, either the 61-yard punt against Tulane or the 60-yard punt against Memphis. Offensive MVP, Andrew Stokes. Who's the defensive MVP? Also Andrew Stokes was the right end. Biggest surprise player for you this year, Andrew Stokes. If you could change one thing, better punt coverage. Who would you like from the fellow AC team? Colby Cox, long snapper, Memphis. So I'd imagine that might be your 10 there, because Andrew Stokes did make all conference, right?
Yeah, I did.
So there you go. Well, that was the USF fan survey as completed by the Bay Area Examiner. It seems like most people feel like things are moving in a positive direction, but there was some issues with a few things this year, a lot of it revolving around the offense, which I think if they come out next year, Jaden Alexis and Naeem Simmons are healthy and the offense looks great, okay, you can explain it away. If they come out next year and it looks a little bit like it looked this year, then that's not good. So we'll see how that goes. We'll be back next week with another pod by the Bay. We'll start previewing the bowl game next week and getting ready for what should be a lot of points possibly out in Hawaii. So thank you guys for watching. Go Bulls.
Hawaii sounds fun. Maybe somebody should go.
Yes. Maybe we got some Hawaii people out there.
Maybe.
Go Bulls.
Bulls.